that wasn't the right number, and it kept putting a 4 in front of the meeting ID number. I don't know.
All right, we are here. You're going to have to open the meeting and do roll call and then give it to me to give the spiel, my friend Dick.
Okay. I will. Oh, I don't have that sheet that I was supposed to say everything just perfectly either. This was going to be done at my office with my laptop originally, which is off with Deb somewhere. Anyways, I will open the meeting for June 23rd for, what was it, 840, what's the address?
822 and 834 Route 28 and 30 Frank Baker.
822 and 834 Route 28 and some number on Frank Baker Road.
30.
30, okay. And I'm supposed to have a nice dialogue, which is sitting at my office. I'm at home now, so. I'm gonna have Kathy give me a lot of help.
Okay, I'm just gonna do roll call. Obviously, Dick Martin is here. Sarah Porter.
I'm here.
Jack McCormick.
Yeah.
Charlie Adams.
Yeah.
And Chris Vincent.
Here.
Quorum is now present. I'm just going to explain how remote participation works. As a precautionary measure to reduce the spread of coronavirus, all town buildings are closed to the public, and the June 23rd, 2020 Design Review Committee meeting will be held by remote participation. My name is Kathy Williams. I'm the town planner and will be serving as moderator for this virtual meeting. Although no in-person attendance will be permitted, every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access and participate in the proceedings. Persons who would like to view or listen to this meeting while in progress may do so by watching via this virtual meeting or dialing into the number provided on the notice of meeting. We'll also be posting a recording of the meeting on the Town of Yarmouth YouTube channel as soon as we are able. Please be patient as we work through any technological challenges with the virtual meeting, which I think hopefully we're over that hump. For all meetings, all participants enter virtual meeting muted. Participants will be unmuted when they're called upon to speak by the chair or the moderator. If you're not speaking, please mute yourself to avoid unnecessary background noise. Do not use speakerphone or Bluetooth devices, and all votes must be roll call votes. For applicants and presenters, can use the raise hand button or the press *9 on their phone to identify themselves to the chair. The moderator will unmute them when they're called upon to speak during their portion of the agenda. Please identify yourself with first and last name and affiliation. For larger projects, the presenters will be given temporary panelist capabilities in order to be able to share their screens while giving their presentation. For public participation during the public comment period for public hearings or at the discretion of the chair for public meetings, the chair will invite the audience to comment, and they can do so by raising their hand button to notify the chair or dialing. If they're dialed in, they can press *9 on their phones. All audience members will be muted until recognized, and they're asked to give their first and last name and affiliation for the record prior to making their comment. I'll now hand it back over to the chairman.
Okay, thank you, Kathy, and thank you for putting up with my technical difficulties. So anyways, I guess we'll have the petitioners explain the changes that were made from previous plans that we saw, and because I guess we're back in order to show some more modulations and so forth in terms of getting the Board of Appeals to be approving of the process. Petitioners, are they there? Because I can't see anything. There's Kieran anyways. Oh, and Andrew. Okay, good. Andrew, you talking? I'll give it to you.
Hang on one second. There you go.
Is he on there? Okay.
Okay.
Okay, Andrew, go ahead. Yep.
All right. Thank you. Good afternoon. For the record, my name is Andrew Singer. I'm an attorney on behalf of the applicant. With us also as a panelist is Karen Healy, who is going to be sharing screens. I'm going to give you just a quick introduction to why we're here today, and then Karen will go through the changes. This is not a big change from what we were heard before you last time. However, as the chairman just mentioned, some of the relief that we sought from the Board of Appeals was not granted, so we have made revisions to address that. To that point, we have provided you with two applications and two options. There's an option A, which is the preferred option, and there's the option B. Option A requires, in a couple instances, still Zoning Board of Appeals relief, and we hope if you approve that, we will go to the Board of Appeals, and we hope they will approve it. If not, though, if they don't approve it, we are also asking you today to approve option B. Now, option B is fully conforming with the zoning bylaw and would not need zoning Board of Appeals relief. However, it raises some significant structural and cost issues, which is why it's not desired. But to keep the project moving forward, because we're trying to keep this project going and alive, we're asking you, and we're going to ask the planning board next week when we're before them, to approve both options A and option B in the alternative. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Kieran to go through option A with you. Some of the things are the same on each option, obviously, but he can tell you the go through A first, and we could answer questions, and then we can go to B if that's what you would like. Kieran?
Good evening, everybody. Afternoon. Can everybody see the screen with the plan view? Are you looking at my smiling face?
All we're looking at is your files. We're not seeing any actual opened PDFs.
Just the file numbers.
All right, we got problems then because it says I'm screen sharing right now of the drawings.
Yeah, you're just screen sharing your, I guess, your file directories. What did you want to share, Kieran?
I was going to start off with the BSC plans.
For which option?
Mine came in as option A, I guess. So
Okay, if you hang on, I can maybe share my screen.
okay, let me see if this will work.
Are you going to keep trying?
One more time, and let's see if that will come up. No, I guess it's just not coming up, Gary. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Let's see what I can share here. Okay, so this is option A, site plan.
Okay, we can start with this. We'll start off with the small of the two buildings, number 834, the former Moose Building. On the easterly side, you will see some red. I don't know if you can zoom in a little bit there, Kelly, or not, just to, yeah, even that's fine. And then zoom down a little bit. I'll scroll down a little bit. Thank you. On that building right there, we have the bump out on the west side and a bump out on the east side. The bump out on the west side is something that you have not seen before. What you had seen was some smaller bump out in that area. We've included that to also add a walkway along that area. I believe on the plans that you had originally looked at, that walkway was not there. And that's on the westerly side of the 834 building. And there's also a bump out to include both sets of stairs that are in that area. On the easterly side, that's in red, there is an existing handicap ramp on the back of the building. We're looking to propose a 5x11 bump out, and that is to break up the overall length of the building. We need modulation every 50 feet, and that bump out right there will allow us to do so. Caddy, while I'm still talking about this building, if we could scroll down to the other option B.
And Kieran, if I could just add in there while Kathy's doing that, for the board members know, that bump out that Kieran just described requires a special permit from the Board of Appeals. That's why that's on the option A plan.
And if we could zoom up on that same spot.
Do you prefer A or B? I forget.
A is the preferred option. This is option B. You can see that the westerly side of the building is exactly the same. There's no change there. The change between A and B is the black square that's on the easterly side. And basically that is a bump in to the existing building. It would require us to cut the walls and cut into the building 5 feet by 10 feet parallel to the outside the building. The reason that's in that location is, one, it would not require a special permit from the zoning board, and it would also meet the modulation requirement of the VCOD. The reason that this is not the preferred option is that even though it would comply, it would mean cutting into an existing building, cutting into the roof lines, and it just would be very difficult to do. Yes, it could be done, but it's an expense that we don't see a great benefit, and especially as it would be cut in, you actually wouldn't see any of it at all from the street. If you drove by, the bump out would be more visible and would be more interesting as far as breaking up the modulation. So that's the item on that building. If we go back to the other, yes, option A. So option A, you'll see, we'll go to the main building right now. As you've seen in your floor plans, basically every 2 existing motel units, there is a wall that breaks up the living space, a firewall. And to meet the modulation, basically every firewall, every second firewall would need to be enclosed completely. That would, right now what we're proposing is to put a dormer over each one and to break up the building considerably. You can see it right there in this partially elevation. You can see how this is what it would look like in option A. And you can see there's a lot of breakup and a lot of efforts to modulate the building, but it doesn't fully comply with zoning because the roof areas are not enclosed down below. So as you drive by, you would still see the same thing pretty much, if you could see these at all as you drive back on the street. But the big difference is that we're doing everything in option A except enclosing them, which is what makes it a compliant modulation. So you can still see the new dormers on top of each one, the new cupolas on top of each one, the new roof line ones all the way along from beginning to end of that existing flat roof. That is what we're proposing on both options. And the dormers, sorry, not the dormers, but the gables are proposed on both options. The only difference is that it needs to be enclosed, and on option A, preferred option, it would still be open. And there were 4 of those required on the east side and 4 of those required on the west side. And that's...
So, I have a question. When you presented it earlier, last time, there was no cupola every however many feet and no gabled little, you calling it a dormer, which...
Yeah, I should gable. I should say gable. No, the gable, that was something that was done along the process. I actually thought it was part of the design review when we originally came in.
It was.
Yeah,
Yes.
it was, yeah. So, but
does that come out, is it aligned with the actual enclosed part of the wall, or is it it looks like it's pushed back to where the enclosed wall of the building is and not on the outside of the porch? Is that true?
it's not on the outside the porch, but it's also not on the inside wall because this
It would be too small looking.
right, this roof area that you see is pretty steep, and that goes up vertically very quick.
Yeah.
Because we have a large flat roof for solar behind it. So this would probably be 2 feet back. There are some side views if we go to the front.
Yeah, I'm looking at that
Actually,
now.
Kieran, if I could just jump in for a second, for Sarah's purposes, what we're looking at here is basically what was reviewed before, and we did take part of this to the Board of Appeals, and there are some other changes on this building that Kieran will describe, but this back part, which is unenclosed, is what requires review. When he goes to exhibit option B, you'll see it enclosed. But this, what you're seeing on option A, is very, very similar to what you were looking at, we thought, the first time as well.
Okay. All right, thank you.
And if we leave that partial east elevation up and you look to the front, right there in that, where you can see the 3 small windows right there, that was the area where we had the 2 smaller openings, and there are 2 doorways there right now. So that is going to become reduced down to 1 doorway and have a handicapped accessible ramp on the inside of that area. The door right where the mouse or the cursor is right now, and that will ramp up to the left towards the street and then into the building in that area. So that will break up that entire facade again, and that's on both options, option A and option B. If we go just about 1 inch to the left, you'll see this area right here. This is the front face of the building. There was also a section that was more than 50 feet long along the front face. So that is a small portion that bumps out right there to break up the 50 feet, again, modulation. And that is proposed on option A and option B. So those are things that are proposed for both options.
This is the area over here where we were just showing that bumps out with the ramp that he was talking about.
And then if you look at the roof line up ahead, up over those, you can see where the cupola is and the new roof is and how that sticks out over the building. And that runs the entire length from front to back, approximately 300 feet long on both sides.
I have a question. That enclosed area where the ramp is, so the ramp is inside, is that, or am I misunderstanding what you're showing or what you said?
You are correct, the ramp is in the inside, and the reason being is that the driveway for the building is extremely close there. We couldn't meet the modulation of 5 feet and then have a ramp of 4 or 5 feet outside of that. So to meet the modulation, we put the ramp on the inside.
Okay, thank you.
Let's see it in plan view here. The
Right.
ramp comes down.
Point that out again, please, Kathy, I'm missing it.
This is the ramp that comes down. That's what's enclosed.
Okay, it's off the screen. Oh, I know why it's off the screen. I've got to, hold on. Okay, I see it now, thank you.
And then this is the
Right,
bump
do
out
any-
in the front.
And to
Any other
to
members have any
Karen's
questions on that?
point,
Go ahead.
oh, I was just going to say that those 2 parts that we just discussed, as Kieran said, are on both options A and B. They're conforming for zoning purposes, so those on either option stay the same.
And if you could scroll down, Caddy, there is another one that is similar on the other side right there. That's on the west side. And that will be the same idea, just accessible area that will be enclosed. And again, the reason for the enclosure is that we have the driveways extremely close and it's safer to put it on the inside.
I'm sorry, I can't find it. Oh, there it is.
And again, the reason being is that base of that building is more than 50 feet long, so we have to put in the modulation again. So we're meeting the modulation on that area, on the front, and on the front portion of the east side. Again, you can see on the left-hand side of the screen where we have the proposed gable and cupola and all the rest of it that is proposed on option A, and to make it compliant, option B would have it enclosed.
I don't suppose you'd consider putting a sloped roof on that, would you? Just a thought. And it may interfere with the dormer, but perhaps there's space behind the dormer. Just an idea.
Yeah, I guess I shouldn't have said dormer at all. Sorry for that, Sarah. It's just purely a false gable that is sticking out there.
Yeah. I mean, on the west elevation is where I'm looking. Does it make
Here?
Yeah,
Where?
exactly right.
Just so you know, Mark Grills, the building commissioner, did go and meet with Eric Tolley, the architect, and they did discuss different options of maybe sloping it. And because of the height and the existing roof lines, there was some concern about that being difficult to do.
Okay.
So it was discussed.
I don't mind flat roofs myself, but just a nice thought.
They did add a nice detail here on the columns, similar to the wrapping of the columns for the canopy, which I think looks very nice.
Actually, when I'm looking at it, I'm wondering if the trim, the roof could be added just a smidgen, just because it looks so short and squat. And you would
The
see
cornice
that.
should be a bit bigger. The cornice, you mean? Like, or the
Or
top?
no, even
The
a
top.
little bit more clapboards or whatever the material is above it, like a foot, I don't know. Just a thought, because you do see that, right, when you're driving down 28? It just looks
Vaguely.
short and squat to me, that's all.
Yeah, it
Thought.
is.
Yeah.
It is. If you follow the line of the roof line of this flat roof, and you follow that to the left, you'll see that it's about 1.5 feet higher than the second
Yeah.
floor. So it is raised up already to be a
Yeah.
little bit bigger than the minimum.
Okay. Well, it's not quite enough, but I wouldn't object to the project because of that. It's just a thought. Thank you.
And Kathy, if we could have
Okay.
a look at option B for the floor plans.
Did you want to look at all at 834 before we leave option A? Because they haven't seen those elevations.
If you would, please, that'd be great. Okay, so this is on the top here, we have the west elevation. This is similar on both options. This is what we're proposing, and there's a door behind the window on the left and a door behind the window on the right in the middle. And this would have one central door, and then you would go left and right once you go into that building to meet the existing doorways that are set up in the building.
And this would be on both options A and B. This elevation would stay the same.
If we could scroll down a bit. Good. So on the rear of the building, sorry, on the east side of the
East
building,
side.
on the east side of the building, you can see this bump out, which is 5 by 11, and this is it's just easier to build something sticking out rather than cutting in. So that, again, this is why this is option A, and we will show option B in a little while. And if we
Anybody
go
have any questions on that?
Well, I just was
No.
curious, and I had it on mute. Can I see a floor plan of the west side of that smaller building, please? Or
There's no floor plan of this
oh, there
building.
isn't, okay. I couldn't find any. That's fine.
Yeah.
Just,
That's why you couldn't find it.
I was just curious. I have my computer out too, so.
the building is broken up into 3 tenants right now. And if you look where the cursor is right now, to the right window, there is a single passage door that goes into the building. And of the bump out to the left window, there is also a single passage door that goes into the building. So this one bump out encompasses both of those pedestrian doors.
This is pretty small scale. It looks like there's no trim on the windows, but I think that's because it's so small. Is that true?
Yeah,
Yeah, it doesn't look like there's trim on the windows on that elevation.
it will, I guess it will match the existing, Sarah. The other windows are not going to be touched on the left or on the right. So the new
Okay.
windows will match. I can't say the limits of the trim right now, but it will match the existing.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay. Shall we go on to option B?
Okay, so on option B, you can see that the cupola and the gable and the roof line is exactly the same. The only difference is that the 2 walls down below it are enclosed. The railing on top would be
So that-
attached. The
So
railing-
Kieran, that makes those units bigger?
those units do become bigger, yes, but it's not a great amount of practical space because it's basically encompassing between 2 walls.
The balcony.
So it's basically encompassing the balcony. and then you'll see the railing and on the upper windows. Those will be attached sliders so that for safety. And if you look to the left, you can see the same axis. That's the same axis there as on option A. That will be on both plans. And pull to the left, you'll see the street face that matches option A and option B as well.
And if I could just mention, Karen, about the when you go to the back of the building with the enclosed patio balconies area, one of the problems, as Kieran noted, it's a very small space. It's also going to be unconditioned space. So it's going to freeze in the winter, bake in the summer. And so that's why the sliders are there. And that's, again, one of the reasons we prefer option A, but option B is the fallback if necessary with the Board of Appeals.
You do add, the, when they do the porches, you are adding a little outdoor closet space as well for each unit.
Yes.
Is there a substantial cost factor between A and B?
There is, in fact, a substantial cost factor. We don't have the final numbers, but it's to the, probably in the high six-figure range. And it also winds up making the units that much darker, because instead of having the whole opening from a balcony or a patio, it's now enclosed. You have sliders, which is great, but it's not nearly what it is, with option A.
Unless you remove the wall and make it part of the interior space, which obviously is a much bigger expense, right?
Yeah, now you've gone to the many seven figures.
Yes, right. Okay.
Anybody have any questions on that?
To me, it doesn't make any sense to expand, to enclose the space. It sounds like excuse my language, a dumb idea.
It would seem to me that
Well,
A would be
I don't think it's going to make personally, I don't think it'll make that much difference for the overall cost that it's going to involve. I think the overall look is going to be the same, and all these sections aren't really seen from 28 anyways, to speak of.
What is the objection? What is the problem with not enclosing them in terms of site plan review or whatever the building inspector said? I don't really understand.
This is Andrew. I can address that, Sarah. It's not a planning board or a building commissioner issue. The board, some of the members of the Board of Appeals, it wasn't all, but some of the members of the Board of Appeals felt that the way the VCOD bylaw is written, that very, very few variances from those very specific design standards should be granted. And they had concerns about that. And there were some additional points, as Kieran's gone through, some of the other changes at the front of the building, which needed relief before, now won't need relief. But we're continuing to prefer the relief on the back of the building, which has been noted is not visible from Route 28, for those enclosed porches and balconies. There is less relief. Both options, option A requires less relief from the Board of Appeals now than before because of the changes that were made at the front of the building, southeast and west, as Kieran went over. Still just has that minor, what I'll call more minor relief in the back. We're hopeful that that would be acceptable to the Board of Appeals. They did grant us some other variance relief on the site work, and we are going to go back to them with option A for the relief that would still be required.
Yeah, I still don't quite get it, but the existing building, it now has open balconies? Is that true or not?
That is true. The balconies are open right now.
Well, I don't get the logic, but I guess I don't understand. You don't need to explain it to me.
The way let me just jump in for a second, Andrew. The way the bylaw is written is that they want to have meaningful modulations in the building facades. in order to create interest, to break up a large building. And the way it's
And yeah.
phrased is that they need to be, you can use porches to
see.
embellish those types of things, but you can't use them to replace an actual modulation of the building walls. And that's where we're stuck. So normally we would want to see an enclosed modulation. This might be a unique situation based on the existing structure and a lot of reasons that I know that Andrew will present to the Zoning Board of Appeals of saying, well, maybe we do get the relief for these back sections as long as we've already gone to the front and made those modifications to meet the bylaw in the front.
Okay, all right,
Yeah.
thank you. And I
The
get
bylaw is
it.
written.
I guess.
The bylaw is written in a way where, you know, it has more requirements. It doesn't really allow for a lot of suggestions or examples and so forth. It has a lot of requirements that for an existing structure I don't think apply too terribly well.
The VCOD bylaw was really meant for raise and replace. It's
Yes.
a hard bylaw to redevelop an existing building with.
Yeah.
And you get a lot of cookies with the VCOD. So the idea was that it needed to look accordingly. So it is a little difficult.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
Anybody else have anything? So the petitioners are interested in our theory or recommendation relevant to either option A or B. I'm getting kind of a feeling that we're all comfortable enough with option A, but we'll pull that separately if that's the case. Does anybody want to say that the option B is something that's that they are kind of more insistent on?
Personally, Jack McCormick speaking, personally, I think that as far as my concern with the design review committee is that I think either option A or option B, I think looks great, to be honest with you. And,
I feel the same way. I prefer A, but
I'd say I prefer A.
but B is also acceptable. And I think good judgment should be taken so they won't have to come back again on this particular area.
Right. All right, Kathy, where do you think we should go now? Do we have to fill out the usual routines, or do we want a motion relevant to?
All of the above. All of the above, Dick.
Okay. All right.
I
I
think with
make
regard
that motion, whatever it is. I'm not quite sure. I think
Thanks, Ed.
I make it.
I think that they're gonna look for a motion on both of them, but I also think if you guys have a recommendation, I'm sure they would be happy if you took a vote to recommend option A.
Okay. Is that appropriate to do right now?
Why don't we just make a motion that we are
Can I hold?
comfortable with either
Can I just hold
option
up?
A or B?
Can we just go through because you have to fill out the form, and then we can do a lot of that stuff that
Okay.
you want to do
All
at the end.
Then let's do that now.
Thank you. With regard to citing strategies, I just noted that in subsequent submissions, the applicant addressed the outstanding items from the March 3rd design review comment. They eliminated the parking in the front, they did a detailed landscaping plan, and they also did foundation plantings, and they added a tree, in-lot tree in the parking of 834 Route 28. And I do note that at the May 28th ZBA meeting, the applicant did receive relief for the in-lot trees and spacing and the easement for the sidewalk along Route 28 and the second freestanding sign. So for site strategies, everything stays the same with regard to either met the standard or is not applicable, but it no longer had those caveats of saying meets the standards because they have addressed those in their subsequent submission. So if everyone's okay with that, we can move on to the building.
Yep.
Yeah, that's fine.
I'm okay with that.
I think the building is, as far as breaking down the building mass, multiple buildings or submasses, I think that they meet both of those standards for both option A and B.
Yes.
When it gets to the varying the facade lines, I think for 834 Route 28, both options meet this standard. It comes a little trickier with option for 822 because option A requires relief for the open air porches, as porches should not take the place of changes in the exterior walls of 5 feet every feet. every 50 feet, and option B meets this standard. This is where you guys might want to put in, you know, something of a emphasis of saying you voted it in preferred option A, if that's the way you would like to do it, or what?
I'd like to say we prefer option A, which is
I
what
second.
the
Yeah, I think
owner,
everybody did that, so.
everybody
I'm sorry,
wants
did
it.
Charlie second it?
Second it.
All right,
whoever-
the motion, I guess, has been made that we prefer option A and seconded. All in favor?
Aye,
Oh,
Aye.
roll
Oh,
call.
we need
Any,
a roll call.
the roll call. Okay, Jack,
Yes,
Charlie,
Yes,
Sarah?
yeah, Yes.
That's all I'm seeing.
And Chris is a yes.
Oh, Chris is here. Okay, he's down below my screen. Chris?
That's a yes.
Okay.
So are you voting,
And, yes, for
voting,
me. So we're voting that, how about we vote for that either option is okay, but the preference is for option A?
yeah. Good, I think so.
that's fine with me.
okay. So, okay, hang on one second.
I think we should say if we like option A, let's say option A.
Yeah,
I'd hate to give any kind of gray area there. You know, if we're gonna go with it strongly, let's say
Yeah,
option.
that's fine.
Well, this is Andrew, if I
Well,
could just.
We could
make a
say,
comment.
while we believe that both options meet the criteria that we want to see or that we're comfortable with, that we are actually more in favor of option A, which does require more Board of Appeals relief, I suspect, right?
It's a little more relief, but it's less money.
Yeah.
I don't think we'll put that in there.
No, I
Yeah,
wouldn't.
well, we
Well, no, I'm not saying just put it in there, but that's what the discussion is.
Right.
Yeah.
It's part of it.
So,
Yeah, I mean, it doesn't make much sense to be paying extra millions of dollars for such slight modulation that you're not going to really see the difference anyways.
mm-hmm.
Not when you drive.
And they're making the modulation to the second building. That's being incorporated now, so that's taken care of.
I agree.
so when you say option A, are you talking about 822 or option A for both 834?
Option A for both.
Okay.
Both.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
So the way I have it is you voted in favor of option A for both 822 and 834 Route 28. Did you want to give specific reasons?
Mean more than we just like it better and don't see the point in spending all that money for what we see as a.
Yeah, I mean, I think we could say something to the effect that the extra modulation to meet the criteria doesn't make any substantive change, and yet is a
Burdensome
what am I trying to
expense.
say? Difficult, expense for the
A burdensome
for the
expense sounds good.
Burdensome expense.
burdensome. I like. Yeah, that's good.
And as was mentioned, lighting, doing it between A and B seems to be more important for people having better lighting than to have it more enclosed.
Yeah, I think it's better for the overall look of the, for the interior of the units.
Interior.
Mr. Chairman, could I-
Hardship.
Yeah, I mean, I think you could use the word hardship if we want to. Certainly financial hardship.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Economic hardship, financial hardship.
Yeah, we can add that.
So we're getting rid of burdensome expense and saying a financial hardship.
That sound a little
Can
better?
we just keep it
I might like the
simple and
burdensome
say,
expense better, actually.
I'm sorry, what?
I think the burdensome expense is actually a better term.
So what I have is the design review committee voted in favor of option A for both 822 and 834 Route 28 as the extra modulation to meet the criteria does not make any substantive change, but is a burdensome expense and
Period.
and would period. Thank you. Thank
Sometimes
you,
you just gotta put
thank
a
you,
period at
Chris.
the end of the
Thank
sentence.
you. I like your thinking, my friend. Did you have something you wanted to say, Andrew?
Yes, I appreciate the vote that you're discussing now for option A. What we would ask you to do once you're done with this particular vote is we would ask you to also vote to approve the design or recommend the design of option B for both buildings in the alternative in case the ZBA says no to option A. We don't want to have to come back to you and the planning board again if we're forced into option B. So we would respectfully ask that after you do this vote, you take a vote to approve option B for both buildings as an alternative to option A if necessary.
Typically at the end, and maybe I recommended that it go in the wrong location because typically we make a motion at the end. I have one for option A and one for option B. Perhaps we do that at the end instead of putting it where we were talking about with regard to facade modulation.
I think probably
That's
at the
fine.
end is better for both of them.
Yeah, no, we appreciate that. Thank you.
Anything else in the body of our
Yeah.
discussion? Almost everything's the same as before.
So for varying the facade lines, I mean, you're going to say meets the standards for both, even though
Yeah,
one of them.
I mean, we said it met the standards before. It still meets the standards as far as we're concerned. For design review.
Well, I'm just going to say option A requires relief for the open air
might be-
or porches, but option B meets this standard.
Well, yeah, I guess you could say option B meets the standards. Option A,
Requires relief for the open air porches.
yeah,
That sounds good to me too.
but we would recommend such relief.
Yeah, I agree.
Okay, so I just say option A requires something for the open air porches and the design review committee would recommend such relief and option B meets the standard. So varying the wall heights, the roof lines, the bringing the building down, edges down, the building materials, traditional, all of that meets the standards. The only comment that I'm going to keep, and it's up to you guys, but Sarah had one in section 8 for ensuring all building and roof colors for 822 Route 28 are complementary to the existing neutral color scheme, provide different shades to enhance the variations in building massing, to bring all the building colors together, refinish the brick to better match the entire building color scheme, and prior to submitting building permits, submit color scheme to the town planner for review. Do you want to keep that in?
I'm sorry, was this from before or this?
This is from before, and I think would still
Thank you.
apply. It still
Yeah,
meets the
right.
standard.
Thank you.
Incorporating pedestrian scale features, it meets the standards. Then incorporating energy efficient design, it meets the standards. So for option A, hang on. So just to reiterate, on a motion by Sarah Porter and seconded by Charlie Adams, the design review committee voted 5-0 in favor of option A for both 822 and 834 Route 28 as the extra modulation to meet the criteria does not make any substantive change, but is a burdensome expense. And so now we need to, I don't know if we want to make a motion. Typically you make the motion that just says the project option B at 822 and 834 Route 28 and 30 Frank Baker Road is presented at the design review committee is in compliance with the siting and building strategies outlined in the architectural site design standards. You can rephrase that any way you guys want.
Sounds
Do you
good to
think,
me.
yeah, it sounds good to me too.
So is someone going to make that motion
I
or?
make
So
that,
moved. How's that?
Okay. So,
All right, Jack moved it, and Sarah, you want to second it?
I second it.
Okay. Roll call. Jack,
Yes.
Charlie,
Here,
Sarah,
Yeah,
Chris,
Yes.
and the chairman says yes. So unanimously carries.
so I think the only thing that needs to happen is, just need to read the beginning part so that you guys can approve these minutes, if you'd be so patient. I just gave a general description of the project ahead of time and noting that some zoning relief was required from the ZBA, but it wasn't provided, so you're coming back with this modified project. The proposed amendments include revisions to the facades of both buildings. Option A is the preferred option and reduces the amount of zoning relief needed, and option B is proposed to eliminate the need, and the design review committee is going to review both options. For 822 Route 28, both options A and B include the bump outs on the east and west side of the front portion of the Route 28, or the 822 Route 28 building, where there was just overhangs and columns before, in the addition of a new enclosed bump out to the front of the dining room on the south side. Option A retains the open air porches and balconies on the east and west sides of the building as previously reviewed by the design review committee and will require relief from zoning from the Board of Appeals. Option B encloses the open air porches and balconies on the east and west side of the building to conform to design standards. For 834 Route 28, both options A and B enclose the entryway on the west side of the building where it's used to be open. Option A includes an enclosed bump out on the east side of the building for added modulation, but would require relief from the Zoning Board of Appeals. Option B includes an indentation in the building with new roof line on the east side of the building to conform to design standards, except as shown on the plans and noted herein. The previously approved aspects of the elevations and building materials for both buildings and the site improvements will remain the same as previously permitted. Just noted that a summary of the presentation that Andrew Singer gave a brief introduction of the reasons for the revisions and the proposed amendments to the project for option A and B from a legal standpoint. Option A will require some zoning relief. Option B is in compliance and would not need zoning relief, but would cause structural and other difficulties, and asking that the design review committee review both options. And then Kieran Healy, BSC Group, gave an overview of the specific proposed amendments for each option in each building as noted above. And then just with regard to questions and discussions by the design review committee, Sarah Porter inquired about the sloping the roof by the medical office as the flat roof looks a little short and squat. Sarah Porter asked about the trim on 834 Route 28 building, which is matching existing. Dick Martin asked if enclosing the porches at 822 Route 28 adds square footage. Kieran Healy noted it would just enclose the porch area. Charlie Adams asked if there's a significant cost difference for enclosing the porches. Attorney Singer noted it would be more expensive and would decrease light into the building. Making the porch enclosed living space would be very expensive. Sarah Porter did not think the porches needed to be enclosed. Dick Martin noted that these sections are not highly visible from Route 28. Sarah Porter asked why the open porches were not allowed. Attorney Singer indicated that some ZBA members felt that the BCOD bylaw is written in a way to not allow for a lot of variances. The new proposal reduces the amount of relief required than originally proposed before the ZBA due to the change. Somebody's got some weird background noise going. ZBA due to the changes made to the front of the 822 building and the 834 building. Jack McCormick noted that either option looks great, but prefers option A. Charlie Adams preferred option A as well. So I am looking for a motion from someone to approve these design review committee comments as meeting minutes for the June 23rd design review committee meeting for the proposed amendments to the 822 and 834 Route 28 and 30 Frank Baker Road redevelopment project.
Do I have a motion to that effect?
I make that motion, but I can't
All
say
right.
what Colleen just said. Too much.
That's fine.
You can't repeat. You
You can just-
that.
You can say so moved.
Don't move. That's right. I forgot about
All right.
this.
So I have a motion from Sarah. Do I have a second?
second,
Second
Charlie
from Chris, I think that was.
Charlie
Oh, Charlie,
seconded.
okay.
Yep.
All right. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion, please say aye.
right?
Aye.
Oh, actually, I'm sorry. Roll call again. Jack,
Yes.
Charlie,
Charlie? Okay,
yeah, Sarah,
Yes.
Chris,
Yes.
and I would do the same. So that passes carries unanimously.
So I just need a motion to adjourn.
I make the motion to adjourn.
I'll second that one.
Motion made and seconded. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Great. This is better when nobody has to see me.
Good on me.
I still put all my makeup on, but
Sounded
All
to
right,
me
well,
like
thank
somebody was learning how to play the castanets or something. Was I getting it from background noise?
I don't know.
anyway,
Wasn't
good
me.
luck with this project. Thank you.
Yeah, good luck with the
Very
project
much.
once again.
Appreciate it.
Good
Thank
luck.
you, everybody.
And
So
thank
just,
you all. Sorry for my delay.
just so Andrew and Kieran know,
Yes.
I'll send you a copy that you'll just have to sign the signature sheet and send it back to me.
Okay.
And then you also need to submit for the planning board.
I'll coordinate with you tomorrow about that.
Sounds good.
Thank you.
And the special permit went through with no appeals. I got to get that signed and get that to you as well.
Okay, thank you.
Andrew, before we leave, I just wanted to express my condolences on the loss of your father.
Thank you, Jack. I
Yeah.
appreciate it.
Yeah.
Yep. So sorry.
He was a good guy.